Welcome to today's wound making video. We are going to start with cocoa powder or hot chocolate, as you can see here. And make sure you have a paper plate so you don't make a mess. We have just some mixing cups. You can use whatever you have at home. And then petroleum jelly or vaseline, whatever you call it at home. You aren't going to need very much. And then food coloring. I have two different options. You are definitely going to want red for sure though. I also used a little bit of pink and even some purple in this video later on. So you're going to take your bowl and some petroleum jelly. I do have a couple different plastic spoons. You can use washable spoons, these are just what I had, and tissues. You're going to take a little bit of petroleum jelly, about 1 spoonful, and put it into your first mixing dish. And we are going to make our first concoction of colored goop. I decided I had a little bit too much of the Vaseline, so I'm going to take some of it out and save it in case I need more later. You can always make more. This first concoction is going to be a dark red, so I'm going to use the red food coloring first. Please make sure you ask for permission before using food coloring. I put just about 3 drops in here, and I always start small because you can always add more. It does take a little bit to mix up the Vaseline and the food coloring because it's like an oil against a water base, but it does mix. As you can see, it's not fully mixed. That's totally fine. We're just starting to get that red color. Now I'm going to add just a little bit of cocoa powder, and you should measure it because if not, you have this accident where I poured way too much cocoa powder in. It's okay. I am actually able to dump some of it out. This is why we want that plate underneath our workspace. You may even want to put down some paper towel or newspaper as well. And you are going to mix that cocoa powder, or if you have hot chocolate mix, that works as well, and mix that in until you have a new consistency. It still feels like jelly, but it's a lot thicker, and it definitely helps with the color. Alright, so now that I have that all mixed, you can see that it's a real nice dark red. If you need to add more red to it, go ahead. I just skipped ahead so you could see that beautiful dark red color. In this container, we're going to mix our second color. You're going to want a little bit of color variation through this that gives us that real look. This color is going to be a brighter red that looks more like what you would expect if you were to cut your finger or have a paper cut. It's going to be bright red instead of dark red. So again, I used just a couple drops of that red food coloring and mixed it in. All of this is totally at your preference, what color you like. So if you want to mix in some pink, you can do that. Or if you think you need more red, go ahead and do that. And this is going to be used very sparingly. I like the dark color better personally. I am only adding just a tiniest pinch of that cocoa powder because it does help mix that color together so that it gets through that oil and water mixture, but it doesn't need to be used a lot for coloring purposes on this mixture. I decided it wasn't quite as red as I wanted it to be, and usually you get that when you add that cocoa powder. I wanted it to be more red than brown. As you can see, it is a process. That's why I skipped ahead on the first one, but this way you can watch and see it does take a little bit of time to get the exact color that you want. This project will take you a good amount of time, not something you can do super fast until you get really good at it. All right, and there's that bright red. And as a comparison, I have the dark red. So these two colors are what I'm going to use right now. If I decide later, I might add another color. Alrighty, now we are on to our mixture. So this is a dark red. I only need a little bit, and I am going to be using my forearm. I'm going to spread that on there to give me a nice base. We're going to be using shredded tissues and sticking it to that. So that base is what helps that tissue stick to our arm. So you can change the size. I've decided to make mine pretty small, but you can do longer or shorter. And here's our tissue, and we're gonna shred that apart. I did find that using bigger pieces isn't always the way to go, but you can use big or small, whichever works for you. Sometimes smaller pieces gives us a better torn effect though. So I did my best here to make sure you guys could see as much as possible while I did this. As you can see, I'm just applying more of my jelly gunk to the pieces of tissue that I'm going to add. The goal here is to give it a ragged look, to look like it's been torn apart, or if you're thinking zombie-ish, it can just look all gross. It will be messy, so please keep that in mind when you are doing this project. You will most likely have dyed fingertips from doing this unless you wear gloves. There is no real rhyme or reason to where you place the tissues, or how they're placed, or how scrunched up they are, or how much of the gunk you put on your arm. It's just as you go. So if you think it looks good, then that's all that matters. If you don't think it's quite right, it does come off really easy and you can try again. Do beware though, the more gunk, the more jelly gunk you put on your arm, the heavier it gets. So you want to try and use just enough so that it stays and that you don't see all the white from the tissue, but you don't want to put so much that it's really heavy and slides off your arm. Sometimes those really small pieces are exactly what you want because they are easier to be flapping around and look like loose skin. And we're gonna fast forward a little bit because this is just me trying to get it to lay how I think I like it looking. You take your time and do however you need to. Go ahead and pause if you need to after this live is aired. All right, now we are using that cocoa powder, that extra that was on my plate. I am dabbing it onto my arm. Be real careful with this because it could get stuck and you could pull it right off some of those smaller pieces, so be very gentle when you do this. But that cocoa powder is going to give it that darker, dirtier effect. So usually when you look at a wound, it's darker around the edges because it's gotten dirt in it or other gunk. So that is what effect we are going for here, is to darken up those edges and give it definition, shape, and kind of make it look a little bit more realistic. So I decided that I wasn't super happy with how my color was turning out. I wanted something a little bit darker. So I did take my purple food coloring and create a dark purpley colored gunk to give me more of a dark on that edge. I can get it with really good cocoa powder, but during one of these filmings I did use hot chocolate and it didn't work quite as well as I wanted to, just because it was so light from all the sugar mixed in. So I did end up doing a little bit of purple Vaseline jelly goop so that I could get that dark color. Alright, and here's that dark purple color. You can see it's pretty dark. I'm only going to use just the tiniest bit of it, tiny, because I don't want my wound to look purple. I know you can't see here except for my hand, but I was just kind of spreading it around, trying to get an even look. This is really all about what you think looks good. Every wound is going to be totally different. You're never going to recreate the same wound. It's just about getting the look you're going for. Alright, we're about to see my almost final product. See there, it is pretty gross. It does look like a nasty wound. Usually when I show this to people, they think I've burned my arm really bad. So it's great for a Halloween gag costume if you're looking for one. I don't recommend wearing sleeves with it, obviously. I have seen it done on the face though, so if you are okay and your parents are okay with that, it does work pretty well for making road rash on the side of your face or something similar to that. As you can see, I am getting a little bit messy, so again, make sure that it's okay that you make this mess before doing this project, okay? Alright, so I'm pretty happy with how this looks right now. I'm just smoothing out some of the wrinkles I didn't like, because it can get pretty wrinkly depending on how much goop you have on there. Alright, I guess I'm going to go with it. Maybe add just a little bit more dark colored of that cocoa powder. And I'm actually going to spread it on my arm. This gives it that real look. Because if you don't spread it around, it's just like this wound on regular skin. Spreading this around gives me that look of like something's really wrong, it's really irritated, it's really messy. It makes it look a little bit more real. Alright, time to show my friends. Oh no! They do not like it. They are very concerned. Alright, so here I actually want to show you guys another option. If you don't want to stain your skin, which is very common if you just put the red Vaseline down, if you put plain Vaseline on your arm first, or any part of your skin that you're covering, it will help prevent the food coloring from tinting your skin. Doesn't do any damage, but if you have something coming up, or if you really just don't like food dye on your skin, this is a way to protect it and keep it from getting colored by the food coloring. And when I do it this way, I do add one layer of those tissues without any color first. Gives me almost 2 barriers of protection before I put that food coloring on my skin, so it's not direct contact. Now that I have that first layer down, then I'll add my red food coloring instead. And now I should have a protection. If I didn't get anything with Vaseline, that still will get dyed. All right, and this is kind of what that looks like instead. And I wanted to show you guys real quick from above to make sure you could see everything. This is me making one of those wounds at warp speed. This one I didn't use any purple food coloring and it turned out like this. And then this is the one you guys got to watch me do with a little bit of purple food coloring. And there it is, all done. Now it looks pretty messy, but I promise it comes off super easy. Watch. promise. Just a piece of tissue and it wipes right off. So you are going to want some soap and water to wash off all the extra, but after that, you're all set.